The Xeraxian ships entered Earth's solar system on a Tuesday morning. They moved like silver needles against the black of space. 6 massive warships and 20 smaller craft. Their hulls gleamed under the distant sun as they positioned themselves in high orbit around Earth. Frank Daniels was eating breakfast when his phone rang. The caller ID showed it was General Martinez. Frank put down his coffee mug and answered. "Daniels," he said, "we need you at the Pentagon. Now." General Martinez's voice was tight. "A car is already on its way to pick you up." Frank didn't ask questions. In his 22 years of military service, he had learned when to listen and when to act. He grabbed his jacket and was outside when the black SUV pulled up to his house. The drive to the Pentagon took 30 minutes. Frank spent it looking out the window at the ordinary world. People walked dogs. Children waited for school buses. No one knew that everything had changed. Inside the Pentagon's secure meeting room, Frank found himself with 30 other military personnel. Some he knew, others he didn't. All had one thing in common. They were veterans with extensive combat experience. General Patricia Martinez stood at the front of the room. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was perfectly pressed. She had commanded troops in 3 major conflicts and was respected by everyone in the room. At 0400 hours this morning, our deep space monitoring stations detected multiple objects entering our solar system, she said. By 0530, we confirmed they were spacecraft of non-Earth origin. The room stayed quiet. These were professionals who had seen too much to waste energy on surprise. Martinez tapped a screen, and images appeared on the wall. Strange ships with smooth lines and glowing blue engines. At 0700, they sent us a message. She played the recording. The alien voice spoke perfect English with an odd, clicking accent. "People of Earth, we are the Xeraxian hegemony. We claim this system as our territory. Your planet will become our newest colony. We have mastered the art of combat through 10,000 years of conquest. Resistance would be futile and wasteful. You have 7 Earth days to prepare for our arrival and formal surrender ceremony." Frank studied the images. He had fought in deserts, mountains, and cities. He had faced enemies with superior numbers and better positions. But aliens? That was new. Martinez continued. "The President has authorized me to form a special response team. Everyone in this room was selected for your combat experience and ability to think creatively under pressure." She looked around the room, making eye contact with each person. "The Xeraxians claim to have mastered combat, but they've never fought humans before." Olivia Wright raised her hand. She was a Navy SEAL lieutenant with piercing blue eyes and a scar across her chin. "General, what do we know about their capabilities?" "Not enough," Martinez admitted. "But our scientists have been analyzing their ships. They're advanced, but not impossibly so. Their weapons appear to be energy-based. Their shields can likely stop our conventional missiles." Peter Kim, an Air Force captain who had flown combat missions over 3 continents, leaned forward. "Do they know much about us?" "We don't think so. Their messages suggest they see us as primitive and disorganized. They've observed our broadcasts and internet traffic, but they seem to have misunderstood our nature." Alan Rodriguez, a Marine sergeant with a weathered face and steady hands, smiled slightly. "That's good. Being underestimated is an advantage." Frank nodded. He had been underestimated many times in combat. It had often saved his life. Martinez pointed to the large table in the center of the room. "We have 5 days to prepare a response. I need ideas, people. Creative ones." For the next 3 hours, they studied everything known about the aliens. The Xeraxians were tall, insect-like beings with 4 arms and exoskeleton armor. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. Their society was built around warfare and hierarchy. As the meeting broke for lunch, Frank approached Martinez. "They think combat is a science," he said. "Something you can master once and for all." Martinez nodded. "And? That's not how it works. Not for humans. We've been fighting each other and everything else since we climbed down from the trees. There's no mastering it because it's always changing." "Exactly," Martinez said. "That's why you're here, Frank. You've seen more kinds of combat than almost anyone alive. Frank had fought in city streets where danger came from any window. He had tracked enemies through dense jungle where visibility was 3 feet. He had defended villages against forces that outnumbered his team 10-1. Get me more information on their previous conquests, Frank said. I want to know who they've fought before, and how those species tried to resist. Martinez nodded. Already working on it. In the meantime, I'm putting you in charge of the response team. Pick whoever you need. Frank didn't hesitate. Right. Rodriguez Kim to start. Add Natasha Petrova. She's the best sniper the Russians have. And Daniel Clark from British SAS. International, that will need approval. This isn't an American problem, General. It's a human problem. Later that day, Frank's team gathered in a smaller room. Maps and data filled the screens around them. Coffee cups and sandwich wrappers littered the table. They've conquered hundreds of worlds, Olivia said, reviewing the intelligence reports. But most were peaceful species. Scientists, artists, philosophers, not warriors. Peter studied the Xeraxian ship designs. Their technology follows predictable patterns. Everything is symmetrical, logical, efficient. Too logical, Alan said. War isn't logical. It's chaos. Frank stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the Pentagon lawn was green and peaceful. Beyond it, the Washington Monument stood tall against the blue sky. Ordinary people lived ordinary lives, unaware that aliens were planning to take it all away. Here's what we know, Frank said. The Xeraxians think they've mastered combat because they've never faced a real challenge. They've conquered weaker species with their superior technology. So they're bullies, Natasha said, her Russian accent thick. Exactly. And what happens when bullies face someone who fights back? Daniel Clark, the British operative with cold gray eyes, smiled. They don't know what to do. Frank turned back to the team. We can't match their technology, but we can give them something they've never experienced before. Humans who refuse to surrender. How do we do that? Olivia asked. We make them fight on our terms, not theirs. Frank's eyes were bright with purpose. They expect us to either surrender or try to fight them in space. We won't do either. What's the plan? Alan asked. Frank looked at each person in the room. Soldiers from different countries, different branches, different wars, all united now against a common threat. First, we learn everything we can about them. Then, we challenge them to prove their so-called mastery. Challenge them? How? Peter asked. Frank smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator seeing an opening. We're going to invite them down here, where we can show them what Earth's veterans know about real combat. Outside the window, the sun began to set. Somewhere up there, the Xeraxian ships waited, confident in their superiority. They claimed to have mastered combat through 10,000 years of conquest. They were about to learn that Earth's battle-hardened veterans had a few lessons to teach them. 2 days passed. Frank's team worked around the clock. They studied everything available about the Xeraxians, their ships, their weapons, their tactics from previous conquests. Most importantly, they studied Xeraxian psychology. They value order, above all else, Olivia explained during the morning briefing. She pointed to the images on the screen. Xeraxian cities built in perfect geometric patterns, their military formations arranged in flawless lines. Their entire society is built on hierarchy and precision. Frank nodded. And that's their weakness. They expect enemies to behave in predictable ways. The team had grown. 20 veterans now filled the room. Soldiers from Russia, Britain, Israel, Japan, Kenya, Brazil, and more. Each brought unique combat experience from their part of the world. We need to make contact, Frank said. Tell them we want to meet. General Martinez frowned. Are you sure that's wise? We're not ready. We'll never be fully ready, Frank replied. But neither are they. They expect us to either attack or surrender. Let's surprise them with a third option. An hour later, Earth sent its first official message to the Xeraxian fleet. Not from world leaders, but from Frank's team of veterans. Zeraxian Command, we acknowledge your presence and your claim of combat mastery. We propose a meeting between our military specialist and yours to discuss terms. The response came quickly. Acceptable. We will send representatives to your United Nations building tomorrow at midday. Prepare your surrender documents. Frank smiled when he heard this. They're so confident. Good. The next day, the Zeraxian delegation arrived in a small shuttle that landed precisely on the UN building's helipad. 5 aliens emerged. They stood over 7 feet tall, their exoskeletons gleaming with embedded technology. 4 arms hung at their sides, each ending in 3-fingered hands. Their heads resembled those of earth-preying mantises with large compound eyes and moving mouthparts. The leader wore elaborate armor with glowing blue lines. He introduced himself as War Master Kral, Supreme Commander of the Hegemony's 17th Conquest Fleet. You wish to discuss surrender terms? Kral said. His voice came through a translator device on his chest. It sounded flat and mechanical. Frank stood with his team in the UN Assembly Hall. World leaders and military commanders filled the seats around them. Not exactly, Frank replied. We wish to discuss your claim of combat mastery. Kral's head tilted, the alien equivalent of confusion. Our mastery is not in question. We have conquered 347 worlds. Impressive, Frank acknowledged. But you've never faced humans before. The alien's mandibles clicked rapidly. Your species is primitive. Your technology is basic. Your military forces are divided by nation-states. True, Frank said. And yet we've survived. We've fought each other and everything our world could throw at us for thousands of years. We've fought with sticks and stones and nuclear weapons. In deserts, oceans, jungles, and cities. Kral studied Frank with unblinking compound eyes. Your point? We challenge you to prove your mastery, not with ships and orbital bombardment, but in direct combat. Warrior against warrior. The alien delegation conferred among themselves, clicking and chirping in their language. Finally, Kral turned back to Frank. You propose a contest, instead of planetary surrender? Yes. A series of trials. Different types of combat scenarios. If you win, we surrender as planned. If we win, you leave our solar system. Kral's mandibles clicked rapidly. This is unexpected, but intriguing. The hegemony appreciates worthy opponents, though they are rare. Then you accept? I must consult with the High Command. Kral paused. What types of combat do you propose? Frank had prepared for this question. 3 trials. First, ground combat in a desert environment. Second, naval engagement in open waters. Third, urban warfare in an abandoned city. Small unit tactics? Kral asked. 5 of your warriors against 5 of ours in each scenario. The alien commander seemed to consider this. Your proposal will save many lives if you simply lose with dignity. That's one way to look at it, Frank replied. After the Zeraxians returned to their ship, the UN erupted in debate. Many world leaders thought Frank's challenge was foolish. Some called it a suicide mission. We cannot pin the fate of Earth on 15 soldiers, the French president argued. You don't understand, Frank told the assembled leaders. This isn't about winning a contest. It's about learning. Learning what? Demanded the Chinese representative. Everything about how they fight. Their strengths, their weaknesses, their technology up close. Frank looked around the room. This buys us time and information, the 2 things we need most. Back in their secure facility, Frank's team began planning for the trials. They selected the best candidates for each scenario. For the desert trial, Olivia would lead a team including Alan Rodriguez, Natasha Petrova, and 2 others with extensive desert combat experience. The Zeraxians evolved on a world with lower gravity than Earth, Peter explained, showing biological data on the screen. Our scientists believe they'll tire more quickly in our gravity, especially in difficult terrain. Use that, Frank told. Olivia. Make them chase you. Wear them down. For the naval trial, they selected veterans with experience in maritime operations. Navy SEALs, marine raiders, and special boat operators. Their previous conquests were all land-based species. Daniel, Clark pointed out. They may not understand naval combat the way we do. The urban warfare team would be led by veterans of city fighting from Syria, Iraq, and Ukraine. Cities are chaos, said Elena Volkova, who had fought in the ruins of Mariupol. No battle plan survives first contact in urban terrain. 3 days. Later, the Zeraxians sent their answer. They accepted the challenge. The trials would begin in 1 week. That night, Frank stood alone on the roof of the Pentagon, looking up at the stars. Somewhere among them, the Zeraxian homeworld glowed. A civilization built on conquest and the belief in their own superiority. Olivia joined him, handing him a cup of coffee. Having doubts? She asked. Frank shook his head. No, just thinking about what they don't understand. Which is? That humans don't fight like other species. We don't follow a playbook. We adapt. We improvise. We overcome. He sipped his coffee. They think combat is a science they've mastered. We know it's chaos that no one can truly control. Will that be enough? Olivia asked. Their technology is still far beyond ours. Technology isn't everything, Frank replied. History is full of advanced armies defeated by determined fighters who knew the terrain and refused to play by the rules. The first light of dawn touched the horizon. In 6 days, the first trial would begin. Earth's veterans against the self-proclaimed masters of combat. Get some sleep, Frank told Olivia. We have a lot of work to do. As she left, Frank remained watching the sky brighten. The Zeraxians had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had never faced humans before. Never faced soldiers who had survived the worst that war could offer. Never faced veterans who carried the hard-won wisdom of Earth's countless battles. They claimed to have mastered combat. Frank and his team would show them how wrong they were. The day of the first trial arrived. The Nevada desert stretched in all directions, a vast landscape of sand, rock, and sparse vegetation. The sun beat down mercilessly. Temperature, 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Olivia checked her team's equipment one last time. They wore light desert camouflage with cooling systems underneath. Each carried minimal gear, water, communications, and weapons loaded with special training rounds that would mark but not kill. Remember the plan, she told her team. Don't fight their way. Fight our way. Alan Rodriguez nodded. He had fought in similar terrain in Afghanistan. They'll expect us to hold position and defend, classic military doctrine, which is exactly what we won't do, Natasha added, her sniper rifle slung across her back. The rules were simple. Each team had a flag to defend while trying to capture the opponent's flag. 1 hour time limit. The area was 5 square miles of desert terrain. From the command center 2 miles away, Frank and the others watched on monitors. The Zeraxian leaders stood on the opposite side of the room, mandibles clicking occasionally as they studied the screens. The trial begins in 5 minutes, announced the neutral AI referee that both sides had agreed upon. War Master Kral approached Frank. Your warriors will fight with honor, yes? According to proper combat doctrine? Frank smiled slightly. They'll fight like humans. The Zeraxian didn't understand. He returned to his delegation, his exoskeleton gleaming under the lights. On the battlefield, Olivia saw the Zeraxian team deploy from their shuttle. 5 warriors in formation, their movements precise and coordinated. They placed their flag in an obvious defensive position on a small hill and arranged themselves in a perfect perimeter around it. Predictable, Olivia whispered to her team, just as we expected. She gave the signal. Her team split up, moving in 5 different directions instead of staying together. The Zeraxians seemed confused by this tactic, their heads turning as they tracked multiple targets. In the command center, one of the Zeraxian officers made a surprised clicking sound. They separate? This is not proper unit tactics. Frank said nothing. He watched as Olivia's team executed their plan. Natasha climbed a rocky ridge and set up her sniper position. Alan moved west, using the terrain to hide his approach. The other, Three team members created deliberate distractions, appearing briefly, then disappearing behind rocks or into shallow ravines. The Zeraxians maintained their perfect formation. They didn't chase. They waited for the humans to attack their position. They won't come to us, Olivia said over the comm. Time for phase 2. Alan pulled a small device from his pack and activated it. A miniature drone, disguised to look like a desert hawk, flew into the air. It circled high above, gathering information about the Zeraxian positions. Their sensors will detect it, Frank had warned during planning. Counting on it, Olivia had replied. Sure enough, the Zeraxians spotted the drone. 2 of them tracked it with their weapons. This split their attention, exactly what Olivia wanted. While they watched the sky, Natasha lined up her shot. She fired a single round that struck the sand near the Zeraxian flag. Not aiming to hit anyone, just to create confusion. The effect was immediate. The Zeraxians shifted positions, turning toward the sniper fire. Their perfect formation changed, slightly. Now, Olivia ordered. Alan threw 3 small objects toward the Zeraxian position. Not grenades, smoke dispensers. They released thick clouds that obscured vision. In the command center, Krall clicked his mandibles rapidly. This is not proper combat procedure. Frank looked at him calmly. There is no proper procedure in real combat. Only what works. On the battlefield, the smoke created chaos for the Zeraxians. Their formation broke as they tried to re-establish visual contact with each other. They had technology to see through smoke, but it took precious seconds to activate. In those seconds, Olivia made her move. She sprinted from her hiding place, staying low to the ground. Years of training in special operations had taught her how to move quietly, how to use terrain for cover. The Zeraxians spotted her too late. She was already inside their perimeter. 2 aliens moved to intercept her, their movements fast but rigid, following practiced drills. Olivia didn't fight them directly. She slid beneath their reach, using the loose sand to her advantage. Earth's higher gravity made her movements more efficient than theirs. The Zeraxians tried to adjust, but they weren't used to an enemy who fought this way. In the command center, Frank watched intently. The other human observers held their breath. This wasn't just a contest. It was humanity's first real test against alien combatants. The Zeraxians became increasingly frustrated. Their coordinated tactics weren't working against the humans' unpredictable movements. They began to make mistakes. Natasha continued firing from her hidden position, forcing the Zeraxians to divide their attention. Alan created more distractions on the opposite side. The other team members appeared and disappeared, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. This is not how combat is conducted, Krall protested. This is exactly how humans conduct combat when outnumbered or facing superior technology, Frank replied. We adapt. We use the environment. We create confusion. On the battlefield, Olivia reached the Zeraxian flag. 2 aliens moved to block her. She didn't try to fight past them. Instead, she feinted left, then rolled right, using the slope of the hill to increase her speed. The Zeraxians followed their training, moving to where she should have been according to standard tactics. But Olivia wasn't following standards. She changed direction again unpredictably. One Zeraxian fired the training round, missing Olivia by inches. She kept moving, her path seemingly random but actually carefully planned to use the terrain to her advantage. Alan created another distraction, drawing the attention of one guard. Natasha's precise shot marked the armor of another, forcing it to seek cover. The opening lasted only seconds. Olivia took it. She reached the flag, grabbed it, and immediately changed direction again, sliding down the backside of the hill where the loose sand gave her speed. The Zeraxians realized too late what had happened. Their formation had been broken. Their flag was gone. They tried to regroup and pursue, but the humans had planned for this too. Olivia passed the flag to another team member who was waiting in a hidden position. This runner passed it to another. The Zeraxians couldn't track which human had their flag. All 5 humans moved in different patterns, using the terrain features they had memorized during preparation. In the command center, the mood changed dramatically. The human observers began to smile. The Zeraxian officers clicked their mandibles in agitation. 45 minutes remaining, announced the AI referee. But it was already over. Olivia's team had captured the Zeraxian flag while successfully defending their own. The first trial ended with a clear human victory. As Olivia's team returned to base, Frank met them at the entrance. "Well done," he said simply. Olivia was covered in sand and sweat, but she was smiling. "They fight like they're in a simulation. All theory, no adaptation." Frank nodded. "That's their weakness, now we know for certain." War Master Kral approached, his tall form casting a shadow over the humans. This victory was unexpected, but the next trial will be different. Naval combat follows strict rules and procedures. Frank met the alien's compound eyes. "We'll see about that." Later in the briefing room, Frank addressed the team preparing for the second trial. "The Zeraxians will adjust their tactics based on what they saw today. They're learning. So are we," Alan pointed out. Frank nodded. "Yes, but we have the advantage. We've been adapting to new enemies and situations throughout our entire history. They haven't." The naval trial would begin tomorrow in the Pacific Ocean. 5 humans against 5 Zeraxians in specialized watercraft. Another test of the aliens' claimed combat mastery. "Get some rest," Frank told the team. "Tomorrow we teach them another lesson about fighting humans." The Pacific Ocean stretched in all directions, blue water meeting blue sky at the horizon. 50 miles off the California coast, the second trial was about to begin. Alan Rodriguez led the human team for this challenge. A former Navy SEAL, he had conducted operations in every ocean on Earth. With him were 4 other veterans with extensive maritime experience. Their vessel was a modified patrol boat, fast, maneuverable, but much simpler than the sleek alien craft that hovered half out of the water nearby. The Zeraxian vessel gleamed with the same blue energy that powered their starships. "They've adapted their strategy," Frank warned over the radio from the command ship. "After yesterday's loss, they studied human naval tactics all night." "Good," Alan replied. "Let them study old tactics. We won't be using those." The rules for this trial were straightforward. Each team had a vessel equipped with training weapons that would register hits without causing actual damage. The objective was to disable the opponent's ship. Simple, naval combat. War Master Kral had chosen his best aquatic specialists for this trial. The Zeraxians moved with confidence as they prepared their vessel. After their desert defeat, they were determined to prove their superiority. "Naval combat follows universal principles," Kral had declared during the pre-trial meeting. "Proper positioning, firing solutions, and tactical maneuvers that we have perfected over millennia." Frank had just smiled and said nothing. Now, as both vessels took their starting positions, the human observers on the command ship watched nervously. The first victory had raised hopes, but everyone knew the Zeraxians would fight harder this time. "Trial begins in 3 minutes, announced the AI referee. Alan gathered his team for final instructions. "Remember, they'll expect us to follow naval doctrine, to approach from the optimal attack vector, to maintain proper distance, to fire at logical targets." His team nodded. They had trained together intensively over the past days. "We do none of that," Alan continued. "We fight like pirates, not like a navy." The starting signal came. Both vessels began to move. The Zeraxian craft accelerated smoothly, taking a textbook position that would give them the best firing angle while minimizing their exposure. Alan's team did something unexpected. They increased speed to maximum and headed directly toward the Zeraxian vessel. In the command center, Kral's mandibles clicked rapidly. "They are not following proper engagement protocols." Frank watched calmly. Humans rarely do. On the water, the Zeraxians adjusted their position, their weapons tracking the approaching human boat. They fired a series of precisely aimed shots. Most missed as Alan's pilot executed erratic evasive maneuvers, speeding up, slowing down, changing direction randomly. "No predictable patterns," Alan reminded his team. "That's what they can't handle." The human boat closed the distance rapidly. Naval doctrine said this was suicide. Getting too close removed maneuvering options. But Alan wasn't following doctrine. The Zyraxians fired again, this time landing a glancing hit on the human vessel. Damage indicators flashed, but the boat kept coming. Now, Alan ordered. His weapons officer didn't aim for the obvious targets like weapons or propulsion systems. Instead, he fired at the Zyraxian vessel's sensors, the arrays of devices that gathered information about their surroundings. Several hits landed successfully. The Zyraxian craft began moving erratically as its crew lost some of their environmental data. Phase 2, Alan said. His team had prepared special devices. Simple, smoke floats that they dropped into the water around the Zyraxian vessel. The smoke wasn't meant to blind the aliens, but to confuse their remaining sensors with multiple false readings. In the command center, the Zyraxian officers were becoming agitated. "This is not how naval combat is conducted," one protested. "Is when you're fighting humans who can't match your technology," Frank replied. "We change the rules of engagement." On the water, the human vessel circled the Zyraxian craft, staying just outside the range of their most effective weapons while continuing to target sensors and communication arrays rather than vital systems. "They're isolating the Zyraxian crew," Frank explained to General Martinez, "cutting off their information, creating confusion." Martinez nodded. "Psychological warfare." "Exactly. Something the Zyraxians don't seem to understand or value." The alien vessel was now moving in a defensive pattern, trying to protect its remaining sensors while attempting to target the faster-moving human boat. Alan's team executed the next phase of their plan. They split their attack, firing from multiple angles in rapid succession, never establishing a pattern that the Zyraxians could predict. "Humans have been fighting on water for thousands of years," Frank said to Kral, who watched the screens. With increasing frustration, pirates, navies, coast guards all developed different tactics. "Your people studied our formal naval doctrines, but you missed the countless irregular warfare techniques we've developed." On the water, the Zyraxian vessel was now effectively blind, its sensors damaged or confused by the humans' tactics. Alan's team closed in for the final phase. Instead of using their conventional weapons, they deployed another surprise. Remote-controlled mini-boats loaded with simulated explosives. Too small to be easily targeted by the Zyraxian weapons, these devices approached from multiple directions. "This is not part of standard naval combat," Kral protested. "It is for us," Frank replied simply. The mini-boats reached the Zyraxian vessel. In a real combat situation, they would have detonated against the hull. In this trial, they simply registered as successful hits. The AI referee announced the result. Zyraxian vessel has sustained critical damage. Human team is declared the winner of the second trial. Alan's team returned to the command ship, tired but victorious. The Zyraxian crew followed, their movements stiff with what seemed like anger or frustration. War Master Kral confronted Frank as soon as both teams were aboard. "Your warriors do not fight with honor. They use trickery and deception instead of proper combat techniques." Frank met the alien's compound eyes calmly. In human history, those who insisted on proper techniques usually lost to those who adapted and innovated. There is no honor in dying when you could have won by changing your tactics. Kral's mandibles clicked rapidly. "The final trial will be different. Urban combat has strict parameters and protocols." "Does it?" Frank asked. "Ask anyone who's fought in a city. There are no rules there, only survival." Later, Frank met with Elena Volkova and her team who would handle the urban warfare trial. They gathered around maps of the abandoned city that would serve as their battlefield. "They'll be ready for unconventional tactics now," Frank warned. "They're learning from each defeat." Elena nodded. Her face bore a scar from building to building fighting in her homeland. "But they learn slowly, methodically. Humans learn through blood and fear and desperation. That cannot be taught in a day." "What's your strategy?" Frank asked. Elena smiled grimly. "Cities are not just buildings and streets. They're living things with thousands of hiding places, unexpected obstacles, and countless ways to move unseen. The Zyraxians think in straight lines. We will show them that in a city nothing is straight." Frank looked at the team. veterans of the most brutal urban conflicts Earth had seen. People who had survived when survival seemed impossible. The Xeraxians believe they have mastered combat, he said. Tomorrow we finish teaching them how wrong they are. Outside the briefing room, the sun was setting over the ocean. On their ships in orbit, the Xeraxian High Command was growing concerned. 2 defeats were unprecedented in their conquest history. Tomorrow would bring the final trial. And if the humans won again, the Xeraxians would face a choice. Honor the agreement and leave, or show their true nature and attack anyway. Frank suspected he knew which choice they would make. And he was preparing for it. Dawn broke over the abandoned city in Arizona. Once a thriving community, it had been evacuated years ago after chemical contamination. Now it served as a military training ground. Empty buildings, quiet streets. Perfect for the final trial. Elena Volkova checked her equipment one last time. Her urban warfare team consisted of veterans who had fought in the worst city battles on Earth. Each knew how to move through urban terrain, how to use buildings for cover, how to set traps and create confusion. They will expect us to be more unpredictable now, Elena told her team. So we must be even more unpredictable than they expect. The objective was simple: capture and hold the city center building for 30 minutes. Both teams would start at opposite ends of the city. 5 humans against 5 Xeraxians. In the command center set up outside the city, Frank watched the final preparations. The mood was tense but hopeful. 2 victories had proven humans could compete with the aliens, but everyone knew the Xeraxians would fight desperately to avoid a complete defeat. War Master Kral approached Frank. The alien's posture was stiffer than before, his movements more controlled. Your warriors have shown unexpected skill, Kral admitted. But urban combat is the true test of tactical mastery. Buildings, streets, clear lines of fire and movement. Here, proper combat doctrine will prevail. Frank shook his head slightly. Cities are chaos. Anyone who's fought in them knows that no plan survives first contact. The trial began. Elena's team moved immediately, but not toward the objective. Instead, they went into the sewers beneath the city. The underground tunnels were not on any map given to the Xeraxians. Dishonorable, protested one of the Xeraxian officers watching the screens. Creative, Frank corrected. The Xeraxian team moved with precision through the streets, advancing in a tactical formation that would have been textbook in any military academy. They covered each other's movements, checked corners, and maintained perfect communication. Elena's team emerged from the sewers 2 blocks from the objective building. They moved silently, using hand signals rather than radio communications that might be intercepted. The Xeraxians reached the city center first. They secured the target building with methodical efficiency, setting up defensive positions at all obvious entry points. Their formation was flawless. Now they wait for us to attack, Elena whispered to her team. They expect us to test their defenses to look for weaknesses. But we won't, said Carlos, a veteran of street fighting in South America. No, Elena agreed. We won't give them what they expect. Her team split up, each taking a different approach to the building. Not to attack but to observe. They found positions in surrounding structures where they could watch the Xeraxians without being seen. In the command center, Frank explained the strategy to the observers. They're gathering intelligence first, learning the enemy's patterns, and Yeowine, our past. The Xeraxians maintained their perfect defensive positions, rotating guards precisely on schedule, checking their perimeter at regular intervals. They're like clockwork, Elena told her team over secure comms. Every 14 minutes, the same pattern repeats. Predictable, Carlos replied. Dangerous in urban combat. Elena gave the signal. Her team prepared their first move, not a direct assault, but a series of distractions. Small devices placed in buildings around the target area activated simultaneously, creating sounds of movement and combat from multiple directions. The Xeraxians responded exactly as training would dictate. They adjusted their defensive positions to cover the perceived threats, dividing their attention. Now, Elena ordered. Her team didn't attack from any of the distraction points. Instead, they used the brief window when the Xeraxians were looking outward to approach from unexpected angles. One came through a ventilation shaft. Another scaled the outside wall where no windows or doors existed. A third used a zip line from a higher building that gave them a direct path to the roof. The Xeraxians detected the approach too late. By the time they realized the distractions were false, humans were already inside their perimeter. In the command center, the Xeraxian officers clicked their mandibles in agitation. War Master Kral watched the screens, his compound eyes fixed on the unfolding battle. "Your warriors ignore all established urban combat protocols," he said to Frank. "Because those protocols get you killed in real urban fighting," Frank replied. "Cities aren't battlefields with clear lines. They're three-dimensional mazes where danger comes from anywhere." Inside the target building, the human team moved like ghosts. They didn't engage the Xeraxians directly when they could avoid it. When confrontations happened, they used flash devices to disorient rather than trying to outshoot the technologically superior aliens. Elena reached the central control room first. 2 Xeraxians guarded it. They were prepared for a frontal assault. Weapons aimed at the main entrance. Elena came through the ceiling. The maintenance space above the drop ceiling had not appeared on any building plans. The Xeraxians had no reason to check it. Elena dropped behind them and marked both with training rounds before they could turn. "Central room secured," she reported. The rest of her team converged on her position, using the same unpredictable routes they had entered with. Within minutes, they had control of the entire building. The Xeraxian team had been outmaneuvered completely. "Human team has captured and secured the objective," announced the AI referee. "Trial will end if they maintain control for 30 minutes. In the command center, silence fell over the Xeraxian delegation. This was unprecedented in their history of conquest. They had never lost 3 consecutive combat trials. "Your warriors fight without honor," Kral said, his voice flat through the translator, "without proper doctrine or respect for combat traditions." Frank looked at him steadily. "My warriors fight to win, with whatever methods work. That's the only combat tradition that matters on Earth." The 30 minutes passed. Elena's team maintained control of the building despite several determined counterattacks by the Xeraxians. Each time, the humans used the building's structure in ways the aliens hadn't anticipated, moving through walls, using improvised traps, changing positions constantly. "Final trial complete," announced the AI referee. "Human team is declared the winner." The implications were clear. Humans had won all 3 trials. According to the agreement, the Xeraxian fleet would leave Earth's solar system. But as Elena's team returned to the command center, Frank noticed a change in the aliens' behavior. War Master Kral was receiving messages from the fleet. The other Xeraxian officers were checking their weapons. "They're not going to honor the agreement," Frank whispered to General Martinez. "Get everyone to safety, now." Martinez nodded and quietly ordered security teams to move into position. Kral approached Frank, his tall form looming over the human. "These trials have been educational, but they do not represent true combat. In real war, superior technology and numbers prevail." "Is that your way of saying you're breaking our agreement?" Frank asked. Kral's mandibles clicked rapidly. "The hegemony does not retreat. Your planet's resources are too valuable. We will take what we need." Frank smiled slightly. "I thought you might say that. That's why we had a backup plan." At that moment, alarms blared from the Xeraxian communication devices. Kral received an urgent message that made his entire body stiffen. "What have you done?" he demanded. "While you were focused on these trials, other human teams were studying your ships, learning your technologies, finding weaknesses." Frank's voice was calm. "Right now, Special Forces teams are aboard, your vessel's in orbit. Your command systems are under our control." Kral's mandibles clicked in what might have been disbelief. "Impossible." "No," Frank said. "Just human ingenuity. We didn't expect you to keep your word. Beings who believe they've mastered combat rarely accept defeat gracefully." Within hours, the Xeraxian fleet departed Earth's solar system, their once proud warriors now understanding a truth they had never faced before. They hadn't mastered combat. They had merely mastered fighting opponents, who behaved predictably. As Frank watched the alien ships disappear from tracking screens, Olivia joined him. "Do you think they'll be back?" she asked. "Eventually," Frank replied. "But next time, they'll be facing a prepared Earth. And they'll know what humans are capable of," Olivia added. Frank nodded. "That's the most important lesson we taught them. They claimed to master combat until they faced Earth's battle-hardened veterans. Now they know better. The stars shone in the night sky, countless points of light representing worlds the humans might someday visit, and when they did, the galaxy would learn what the Xeraxians now knew, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or numbers, but the wisdom earned through countless conflicts, the ability to adapt to any situation, and the determination to survive against all odds. The true masters of combat weren't those who followed doctrine perfectly. They were those who could throw doctrine away when necessary and find another path to victory.